Settle down and grab a seat, everybody. We're going to kick off the Ignites for day 2. The first one up I'm really excited about because it's perhaps the youngest attendee we have here. I'm not sure. It might be. But I'm really excited that he's giving an Ignite here today. Joe, you ready to roll whenever we start? Cool. All right. So, Daniel, why don't you come on up? You get to kick it off. 5 minutes, 30 seconds a slide, and then we'll have 30 seconds for the next speaker to get up in between. Take it away whenever you're ready.
Hi, I'm Daniel Willis, and I'm putting the R in sports. You know, I love sports, and my dad decided why not I do sports and statistics. So I decided to do that, and this is my presentation. And also, my dad helped me a lot on this presentation. Installing R is easy. You go to your all you have to do is go to a browser, type in R, and download the system. And then it almost works for almost any software. Type R into the terminal to start. You can use it as a calculator. Also, you can use it to check your answers, like does 2 plus 2 equal 4, true or false. I learned our variables are pretty cool. Like, a simple one is A equals 10. And there also are vectors. Vectors are groups of variables in one variable. And a matrix is like a table or graph. Let's look at an example. I took the top 5 relief pitchers and put them with their career ERAs and put them into a vector. And then I can look at their median, max, or minimum. Also, I type in summary and I can look at everything else. You can also read files with R. You can use it as I took top 10 great pitchers and put it into a matrix. Explaining standard deviation is hard. I have to do, but me and my dad went to this one blog, and it showed 2 pizza shops and their times for each day. We put the ERAs into vectors, and we got that the median and mean were the same. Also, we did standard deviation and realized that ABC was a minute faster, usually. Let's go back to an earlier ERA plot. You can put using the Alpine function, you can show the mean, which is the middle line, and standard deviation, which is the top and bottom line. How many of you have seen Moneyball? Well, in 2002, the Oakland A's had the 3rd lowest team salary, and they went on a break. Sabermetrics, the Society for American Baseball Research. Bill James was the father of it, and he joined the Red Sox in 2003. And in 2004, the Red Sox broke the curse of the Bambino. Me and my dad found this one book. We haven't read it yet or bought it, but and also my dad helped me build a GitHub account, but I don't really know what it does, but he'll teach me more about that. The Layman database is pretty cool. You can look at all the baseball data, like batting and people's files, since back to 1871. The Layman database has great examples too. Usually, me and my dad have been using the batting file with the batting statistics, but sometimes using the masters, which shows the players' names and their info. In this example, I loaded 5 great players of their all-time career hits. As you can see, Derek Jeter's is the highest, and some of them are in the 30s and 40s and 60s. Well, in the next one, we took only the years where they had at least 300 at-bats, and everybody's went up from the 30s to the 60s and from the 70s to the 90s to the 190s. On-base percentage is hits plus base on balls plus hit by pitch over at-bats plus base on balls plus sacrifice flies plus hit by pitch, and that's on-base percentage. I took the top five great players and looked at their career OBPs. And as you can see, that Roos is the highest with .4740, and the others are in 30s. Moneyball in R. Matt Damon and Scott Hattie were both players, and Damon had over $6 million more than Scott Hattie, and Damon and Hattie had a better OBP. The new stuff that I'm going to be working on is more work in baseball and R, fantasy football, and stocks and R. Thank you.
Great job. That's a tough act to follow. So first off, thanks to the attendees, organizers, and sponsors of DevOps Days MSP. It's a pleasure to be here. Let me start by asking a question. How many of you have done this? Or better yet, why do we do this? So logs represent a source of truth for an application, but in a lot of ways, they also provide instrumentation. Sometimes we even add our own information to logs, and in the Rails framework, this is how we would do it. As we all know, there's data hidden in logs. We've got data about how long something took, how many occurrences, and with the right tool, this data can be turned into information. So how do we get the information out? What if there was a multi-purpose tool, something that could gather all this information for us without parsing brittle logs? We all know that the best tools start on the command line. So any tool that we might choose has to be simple and powerful. No overhead would be nice, and something that we can run from the shell. It'd also be nice to have a tool that isn't going to lock us into a fixed solution. Something that works with our current languages and frameworks. Something that is flexible enough to change with the times. Well, StatsD, the hero of my story, is just that. I like to think of StatsD as logging for metrics. Basically, any place where you might add a log statement, it's a perfect place to add a StatsD metric. Just a little history. StatsD is an open source project. You can find the project here. We've got a lot of people from Etsy here. I would like to thank them for releasing this tool. Before we jump in, there's a couple of key concepts. StatsD stores metrics in buckets, and each metric has a value. There's a concept of a flush that really didn't make for a good slide. This defines when the stats are aggregated and sent to the upstream service. So let me show you a couple of the tools. We'll start with a counter. This is going to count occurrences over the flush interval. And instead of adding logging code, you could add a statement like this instead. Maybe next we want to add a running total, say registered users on the site, and here's an example of a gauge. Once set, this doesn't change until it's set again. Finally, how about a timer? Here's an example. It keeps track of how long something took. This one I like to call the bonus metric. When it runs, you get all sorts of extra information, percentiles, averages, standard deviation, etc. So the counter, timer, and gauge, they're all pretty easy, right? These are tools you use with StatsD to instrument your application and generate an army of metrics. But once you've got this army created, what do you do with them next? Well, I've shown you the good. Now let's take a look at the stumbling block for StatsD. You need a new stack. You need a service to receive the metric, something to visualize the metric, and something for alerting. So here are a few of the tools that are used most often. You can use Node.js to run the default aggregator. Brubeck is new on the scene. It was introduced by GitHub just last month. Graphite is the de facto visualizer, but Grafana is certainly a viable option. And I've never used it, but Cabot, I heard, is a popular alerting tool for Graphite. So from your army, like you'll transmit your stats via UDP, and you'll also notice a data transfer point at each service. And if you're working in a shop that is stack specific, the typical stack of Node.js, Graphite, and Cabot can inject a lot of new dependencies. The stack list gets a little deep, especially when it's outside your realm of expertise. Of course, there are Sas Solutions. As represented here, they squish our workflow down and get rid of the interchanges. Most provide visualization and alerting out of the box. You can also do this with a nice handy container. And at Monotrama last month, James Turnbull spent a lot of time talking about giving our teams the tools they need to do their own work. Even Luke here talked about developing infrastructure for developers. I feel like StatsD is one of those tools. Thanks. My name is Mark Morris. You can find me at Blurred Bits on the tweets, and I work at Scout, a hosted server monitoring solution. Thank you.
Hello. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the reason I think that we're all here and how it relates to the Segway. It was innovative, it had great tech, it has a gyroscope for self-balance, but it didn't find a market. And we can, relate to that in a lot of ways on a smaller scale, but we want more. We want to be involved with something that has value, something that'll have an impact, the chance to work hard at work worth doing, as Teddy Roosevelt put it. So how can we make it more likely that we're doing that? We can start by acknowledging that we're creatures of habit. And if we want to do something new, we have to provide so much value that people will change their patterns to make room for what it is you're doing. Steve Jobs, forgot his name, he predicted that the Segway, we'd redesign cities around it. So how do we have a hope of knowing what'll stick, right? So one way we do it is just build it, and we're good at that. We can go through all those activities that entails and release it and find out if it worked. But if we made any bad decisions along the way, we paid a really high price to learn a lesson. So the next time we build an MVP and scale it down a little bit, and we reduce some waste, but a lot of times we go through the same activities and find out if it worked or not. So we didn't bet the farm, but we still gambled quite a bit. So Lean gives us an approach that cuts down some of that waste. We can break it down further, figure out what are our assumptions, and what are our riskiest assumptions, how do we test those as fast as possible. So what we did is try to design a better way to deploy complex applications in the cloud. We put an early prototype in front of customers, and our focus was totally wrong. So we learned that so early that we lost about a week rather than several months or more of development effort. So you want to be wrong as fast as you can. And this build doesn't have to be code. In fact, it shouldn't if you can test it faster any other way. So let's see. Okay, I may have lost you if you don't work directly with customers. And you're really doing your part, but you're kind of, you're kicking the ball out of the tent, right? So what is it that your organization is trying to achieve overall? Because that's the goal that should transcend silos. And that's hard. We've got a bunch of teams usually that are, they each have their own objective and they're not necessarily aligned. So even the most resourceful design leaders and product leaders can't achieve that common goal in isolation. For one thing, they need a lot of ideas from a lot of different perspectives. And if we're waiting for those to come out of design, we're waiting for those to come out of marketing or product or the highest paid person's opinion, we're really missing an opportunity. And we find that a lot of those really good ideas are, they come from the people that really know what's possible. We love involving the engineers, getting them closer to what the customers are experiencing. It's not just about ideas, though. Are we empowering these people with the tools that could make them, able to achieve their objectives more? So can they even, launch a build? Can they launch a release? Do they have access to the metrics we're gathering? And what is it that they need to achieve their goals? Have we asked them? And I wouldn't suggest, I'm ahead of myself. That's not what I expected. Oh, it can be disorienting, right? It can be even seen as a challenge or a threat to people that are used to a different way of working. So, understand what it is that they're trying to achieve and how you might be able to help them. I didn't say go out and tell them how to do their job, but ask questions and figure out what their challenges are and be an ally, really. Because designers make great allies. They can be the bridge between, some idea you hacked up and real customer insight. They have a way of building shared ownership between teams. They can draw ideas out of the quietest of developers. So, and we have a language for this already with DevOps, and it's really about extending that to the people that can bring us closer to what the customer is experiencing and help us have an impact. So I heard a story about a CT scanner. It's a terrifying device to young kids. And the engineers at GE witnessed this, and they heard that 80% of kids had to be sedated to use the machine that they had designed. And so they used design thinking, they used a lean approach to come up with not just an experience, but an adventure for these kids. And they trained the technicians to teach them to hold still, to hide from the pirates, and the loud noises that these machines make were cannon blasts. And the kids loved it, and the rate of sedation went down to 10%. And that is empathy. And that's the key to finding these big ideas that can stick. And so as we're becoming masters of our own craft, let's do it in concert. Because if we're able to empower each other through empathy, then we're much better positioned to delight our customers and really have an impact. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Next. Hi, I'm Jason from Victor Ops, and originally I had titled this presentation The Death of Email, or maybe Let's Kill Email, or Email Should Die, 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 but that's a little too morbid, so we're going to talk about the emergence of chat ops. Are you aware that 28% of your time, my time, our time, is actually wasted simply managing email each week? That's 22.4 hours in a standard 80-hour week, which I'm sure most of us actually work much more than that. Furthermore, 20% is wasted or used up simply looking for information. So maybe just trying to reach out to a colleague or a teammate or looking for information within documentation, wikis, wherever. But 20% of our time is just looking or waiting for information to come back for us. So all of these numbers are coming from the McKinsey Global Institute, but they kind of came to the conclusion that productivity can be increased 20 to 25% simply by moving conversations to a more synchronous method. So what I'm talking about is chat, which leads us into chat ops. This is sort of the way I view email. I've probably received 60 or 70 emails already today, and I don't plan on looking at them anytime soon. So I want to do something real quick here, a little bit of crowd participation. Who here thinks they have the most unread emails in their inbox right now? Okay, so what I want you to do, grab me after the Ignites are over. I've got a prize for who has the highest number. I think you're going to like it. So this is the way I view my inbox. It's just a black hole. Like I said, I've received a lot today already. I don't know when I'm going to get to them. I don't know which ones are urgent. I don't know much about anything that's happening in my email. It's just too much of it. I instruct people all day, if you need something immediately, hit me up on Slack, send me a text, do something other than email. So that's sort of why I stand up here all the time. People are probably like, oh, look, there's Jason talking about chat ops again. Because I just love this idea of synchronous communication. I really, John was talking about earlier how they do things within Etsy on IRC, and this is pretty much the exact same type of demonstration. I thought I'd give you just a few demos of what teams can be doing, and this is just me doing a Jenkins build within chat. On the ops side, I come from Victor Ops, and we really believe that incident management is perfect for chat ops, or chat ops is perfect for incident management. So sending all of the information about what's going on with your alerts and who's acting on them and what's happening all within chat creates this tribal knowledge, right? This situational awareness, which we'll talk more about in a minute. So let me give you a couple of the benefits of chat ops real quick. Learning and sharing are the two big ones. We hear a lot about sharing. It's part of our CAM's DevOps model. But also learning, they're very closely related. And so by moving a lot of the conversation and context into chat, we're able to create this bigger or this better situation for learning and sharing things. Next would be speed and security. By not having to do as much context switching, so maybe moving some of your command line tools into chat, you're going to save a lot of time. And also, the chat bot or the third-party integration, it's only going to let you do some things, certain things. So there's a soft layer of security in there. And then, a lot of us in here are introverts. We're not really good at getting into a big room and just getting creative and brainstorming. Chat's a really good way to do that, and it's fun. So situational awareness is sort of the end game of moving conversations into chat. You have this better idea of what's going on in your entire team, your entire company. You got your bots, your conversations, and all these different third parties all adding to the conversation, just creating more information for you to digest. Now, I need a clown on my coworkers here. I received an email. Slack gives you an email every week about the stats. And there was one week recently where 91% of our messages in Slack were direct messages. The rage face that washed over me was probably pretty bad. And the reason is, as a DevOps evangelist, I'm here to advocate for all these best practices, and sharing is one of them. And by moving the conversations out of a shared space and into direct messages, we're doing the exact opposite. We're not sharing at all. In fact, we're siloing those conversations. We're creating buckets that are black box conversations that nobody else in the company gets to ingest and understand. There's a really great quote from Jesse Newland of GitHub where the term chat ops actually originated, and he just says it's placing tools directly in the middle of the conversation. And I've never found a better quote that explains what chat ops is. It's moving all of these different things that we use every single day into chat, so you're creating better context and better situational knowledge. I call this my sea of inefficiencies. You don't have to laugh. But these are all the different increased efficiencies that you actually start seeing when you switch to chat and chat ops. I could talk about this for hours. There's not enough time in 5 minutes for me to cover much. Let's talk more. I've got a book. Hard copies available at VictorOps table, or you can download it for free. Thank you very much for your time.
So, unlike the other speakers that are they have to vamp through this, I realized I missed a bunch of intro slides, so I'm going to talk really fast now. So, because I don't introduce it at all, here's the backstory. There's this dude named, what the hell happened? Fucking Cheslock. All right, so I had a deck that was explaining all of this. Anyway, Pete Chesbot is a bot of Pete Cheslock, and I'm supposed to explain all the things that he says. So apparently, lines of code today is a thing to learn about DevOps, and that means that there are lines and lines and lines of code that we can't escape from ever. The whole point of the introduction, by the way, was to explain what I'm doing and what Pete Chesbot is, and I'm going to kill him for messing up my deck. So this one I love. It's Here Lies Pete Cheslock, stung by people's ability to hear something other than Pete. The thing you have to understand, because I didn't get to introduce it, is this bot takes the things that Pete has said and turns them into something arguably more understandably incoherent than Pete himself. I don't know what these are. Pete chose these for me from what the Pete Chesbot does. I like this one. It's nailed some soft-cooked eggs on the train, right? Again, he never actually tweeted these words together, but the bot figured it out. I'm actually super baked. This would have been far more appropriate at DevOps Days Rockies, I got to say. I don't know how we feel about it here in Minneapolis. I'm not up to date on the laws here. I really don't know how many apples you're supposed to put in a pie, so I just put in 6.5 because I wanted to use up the rest. This is a really kind of interesting metaphor for tech debt now that I look at it, right? Where we're like, well, we bought this tool, so I guess we better use it. The meatball is about to happen. DevOps I know that Catherine believes DevOps is about cats. The truth of the matter from thought leader Pete Cheslock is DevOps is really about meatballs, and that's a thing to know. This is the most inside baseball talk of the entire thing. Generating PGP subkeys and detaching from the Commonwealth. So this is kind of, I guess, what you do when you don't like the way the election is going, or maybe you don't like the way the open source movement is going, and you're just going to go hide somewhere, but you need to be secure while you're doing it. This is so also funny because Pete used to work for Dyn, which is DNS provider, so it says a good thing that DNS isn't fundamentally broken, or we'll have some shared secret keys and passwords. How do you even computer? That is, yeah. And then T-minus 2 hours till I have leftover chopped liver at home because you're going to end up, again, all of these are really metaphors for tech debt. You know, we're going to hit a point where I see this as actually kind of instructive about we're pushing this code, whether it's good or not. Pete is now in GIF format. If you've ever seen Pete give a talk, the truth of his thought leadership is really just being good at collecting a whole bunch of animated GIFs together. It's also kind of ironic that I'm snarking on him for that. And yeah, making the most fire hip-hop album of 2015. I'm really curious as to see how this got generated, because what was he saying in multiple statements that allowed this to happen? So it's really about collaboration, I think. Security is hard because of security. I see you there. That's SecOps right there. You know, really, security makes security hard, and they're watching. excited that I have this extra hour to sow my OHs. So if you're not familiar with this bit of Twitter culture, OH means overheard. It's when you tweet something that you heard someone say. And so, really the most important part of building your DevOps culture is just sort of anonymously tweeting weird stuff that your coworkers say. I can't use my new Amy until I just put some pulled pork on the rest of my leftover latkes. That may be a metaphor for maybe how long it takes to bake an Amy. I'm not sure. Shipped a ton of snow. He lives in Boston. And you got to ship something. So I guess this just means maybe that the weather gods use continuous delivery. It's good enough for them. It's good enough for your industry. I don't want to live in this godforsaken hellhole that Partial Search Library is part of my cheapo home ramen lunch. So he's raging about chef at the same time and conflating it with ramen. I don't really know how I feel about this, but the point is, I guess, we don't always believe it. Accidental bourbon sure seems to be holding up. This one speaks for itself, I think. How do you even DevOps without bourbon? But it can be accidental bourbon. We deal with it as it comes. It's this is my favorite tweet that the bot made up. It's 2014 if you still think writing your own configuration management is indistinguishable from trolling. So this is the pinned tweet on Pete Chesbot, and it freaked me out. Oh, this is the pin. Troubleshooting distributed systems without metrics is like a giant fuck you to any sort of reasonable ops. Right there, that's DevOps. Get that tattooed on your eyeballs. That's it. Thank you. I'm going to kill him.